You are listening to
The Free Amigos.
Hey, I'm Casper.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Tony.
Okay, hello everyone and welcome to podcast number 3 of the second season of The Free Amigos. And as always, I'm joined here by Tony. How are you doing this early morning, Tony?
Yeah, not too bad. Bank holiday here in the UK, so I'm on...
Oh, you're having a day off, yeah?
Yeah. It is allowed sometimes, yeah.
Long weekend.
It's enforced, though. I wouldn't have had it normally, Cass, but yeah.
And, of course, Mark. How are you doing today, Mark?
Very well, yeah. Went down to the beach yesterday, Wittering on the south
nice.
coast. That was awesome. I've missed the sea during this lockdown period, so yeah, that's really nice. Get away with the family for a bit. And yeah, it's a bit of a strange time doing the pod. 9 in the morning.
Early mornings.
Here, yeah. So I've just had loads of coffee and yeah, good to go now.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, got a brew.
Yeah, that's a good one. Hey, and we have a special guest because we have a really interesting topic today. And the topic of today is freedom of choice. And we have a specialist on that today with us. Kevin, how are you doing?
Gavin, but good try.
Gavin.
No, I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
It's funny because there's a Dutch name, and that's Kevin. So for me, it's so close to each other. I'll pronounce. I'll just.
Well, I think.
Yeah.
I think Gavin's actually Welsh.
That's why for me it's like.
I don't know.
Kevin. But anyway, I'll cut that bit out, or I'll leave it in. Good start.
We'll leave it.
Just leave it. It's good. I like it. I could go with Kevin. Kevin's cool.
Oh, I just call you James from now on. Anyway, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, mate. I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on. It's good to connect with you.
Sure is. Hey, you were talking about that topic the other day. You were talking about freedom of choice, and also that you are a big fan of those Netflix series where, well, can you explain a little bit on that? What do you find so interesting on freedom of choice?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it generally comes down to like the choices that we make, and it's like. Firstly, we obviously have the freedom to make these choices, but for me, it's more like the power that goes behind them. And I've always just been really sort of fascinated with how all these minute choices that we make in our life, right from when we are toddlers, and let's be honest, that's probably where you can kind of start really making choices and decisions based on what you want, even if it is to, bawl and scream and cry in the supermarket because your mum or dad won't buy you a water pistol or whatever it is. But we all have these choices, and I think I'm just fascinated with how all of these can almost accumulate to form the path that you kind of walk in life. And I've always been really sort of intrigued by as you're about to touch on there, I've watched a lot of documentaries and stuff like that recently, obviously with lockdown, all to do with sort of prisoners and sort of serial killers, which sounds quite heavy and dark actually, and you're like, whoa, hold on a second. But for me, it's just, I'm obsessed with understanding what led them to that decision that completely changed the trajectory of their life.
And it's a split-second thing, right, most of the time?
Very often, yeah, of course. I mean, there are, of course, examples where people plan this and they decide that, and again, it's like even if you take that sort of planning period, they have all that time to change their mind.
Yeah, and they don't. Yeah,
and it's like, why don't they? They know that they are almost running a risk. They are gambling their freedom with making this choice that they kind of planned. And again, it kind of all comes back to sort of the whole nature versus nurture. And I guess with my background being in primary school teaching, like I was obsessed with understanding the behaviour of the children in my class. Like, why did they do that? Why did, little Timmy stand up from his chair, walk over to little Johnny and punch him in the head? Like, why did he do that? What were the series of events that led him to making that choice to stand up and go and do that, fully knowing the consequences that probably lay ahead?
Oh, there's a lot of different, really interesting things there. But one thing what I find interesting what you say now is this, you have like major decisions in your life. If I look back at my life, then I had like 2 or 3 job offers that could I would have a totally, completely different life if I had taken one of those jobs, but I didn't. But those are really big things. And then you got what I call the sliding doors effect, because there was a movie, right? So that someone was in the metro, in the underground, and the doors open split second earlier or later, and then the whole movie goes into a different direction based on that 1 second. So you've got like long terms and really big events, but also really small things, like just really tiny actions that can almost change the complete timeline of the rest of your life. And sometimes even like not even a choice, but an external thing will happen. There could be a flat tire, there could be a this, there could be a that. Yeah, that's quite fascinating, yeah.
And again, it's like, you know, what were the series of events that led up to that? So you, for example, taking the flat tire, like it's kind of one of those things like if you'd left 10 minutes earlier, would you have had the flat tire?
Yeah.
You know, would you have gone through that experience? Would that, you know, maybe a piece of debris on the road or whatever, you know, would that have been there had you left the house 10 minutes earlier? You know, if you'd left...
Yeah, absolutely. But then that is, that's fascinating. And another thing that came to mind is I met once someone that had shot 3 people and was on the run. And it was in Africa. And so when someone says something like that, just while you're all having a beer, it's quite a strange thing.
I'm on the road.
What? But the story was, he was with his wife and kids. They were asleep, and 3 men broke into their house, and they were standing over the bed with a big gun. So the first thing he did, he got his gun and he shot them. He shot both of them. And then he was like, oh shit, what do I do now? Well, he put them in the back of the pickup truck and dumped the bodies in a lake and kept on driving. And just never went back. And
surely, would he be? What the repercussions be of that if they came into his house first and had a gun pointing at him? I thought in this country at least you would be.
That's why, and that's why it's such a strange thing. Like, and of course now he saved his wife and children, but he will never see them again, most probably.
He's on the run.
Yeah, he's in a different country now. Yeah.
Yeah, and for most people hearing that story, they probably think, well, the guy had self-defense, he had grounds, like he was in bed. It's not like he actively went looking. But then again, it's kind of like, for me, like just hearing that story, I'm like absolutely fascinated with, okay, so what happened in that guy's life involving law enforcement that made him feel that he couldn't go to them at that time?
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. Yeah.
Most people just would possibly shoot them dead and then pick up the phone and ring the police and be like, I've just had a home invasion, like they were standing over my wife and I were lying in bed, like I've shot them, I've killed them, but we were literally lying in bed, we were asleep, and I woke up with a barrel of a gun in my face. Like,
but then still you have the chance that the police or judgment says, no, you get lifelong sentence.
Yes.
There's still that possibility.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that's what I'm fascinated about, is what experience did he go through that led him to make the choice to put them in the back of his pickup and dump them in a lake?
Yeah, and he said he didn't think about it. That's what he said. That you wake up the next morning and you think, what just happened?
Yes.
And I found that fascinating because I have that a lot as well, especially now with the lockdown, is that life becomes a bit of a Groundhog Day, right? And sometimes I just don't know, did I do that yesterday, the day before, or do I do that tomorrow? Sometimes I just get completely confused about it. Like every day you wake up and you actually don't really know what happened yesterday. And did it happen? Quite a mind fuck what you get then,
Yeah, definitely, because I think spending every day at home, there's no... Back when I was in the office, pre-lockdown, you'd have those distinct Monday to Friday type days, and you obviously then juxtaposition against the weekend days and family time and this, that and the other, but every day seems like the bloody same to me at the moment.
Yeah, and then...
So, yeah, I know how you feel there, Cass.
But then you also get something like... I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday about parallel universe. Did something happen, or can you jump from universe to universe? And the strangest thing I ever had is I met someone that had never heard of 9/11. He was 35. This is 2 years ago or 3 years ago. 35 woman from Germany. And she didn't know what happened on 9/11. She had never heard about any of that.
How is that even possible?
That's what I mean.
In this day and age, yeah.
You make a time jump from another universe, or how is that possible? But so she thought that we were just making a fool out of her.
Right. That's really, you say that's really rare now, isn't it, with the internet and everything. But there were stories about World War II where these soldiers were kind of found in the jungle and they didn't realise that the war was over. You know, I'm not sure where that was. In
Japan,
Asia, I think
1975,
they didn't realise that the war was over and they were still hiding out. Yeah, but now you'd think with the internet,
30 years later,
just hiding out in the jungle. But now you'd think with the internet, everyone would know that, wouldn't they? The amount of options you've got to hear about news and and connecting with people and social media, etc. But
well, I think that's because things like social media and the news and stuff are constantly fighting for our attention. So it's almost like it's hard not to hear about it. It's probably more difficult to not hear about something than to hear about it. Even when you actively, so for example, I don't really actively try and watch the news. I'll try and catch like the updates, and certainly with the recent world and stuff, and just, you know, keep myself clued up in terms of what I can and can't do. But granted, I try not to watch the news just because.
That's a really interesting one you say now, and we talked about this before as well, that every time when I come back to Holland, I have to ask my friends, what are the new laws? Because I don't know. But you're supposed to know the law, right? That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine called me like a week later and said, oh yeah, you can't have your phone in your hand while you're riding your bicycle. It was a new law. And I was always holding my phone in my hand while riding my bicycle. And that would have been one of those weird things. The police would have stopped me and you get like a €100 fine or whatsoever. Yeah, but I just didn't know. Well, that's not our problem. Yeah. And now, with the COVID thing, it becomes really tricky because there's a new law in Holland, like the 1.5 meter distancing is an official law now. And not just that, there's like hundreds of rules of the new normal. I have no clue what they are. So it's going to be really tricky for me to go back to Holland at the moment because I just don't know them. And this is what you said, like you try to stay updated, but it's not always possible. It's quite difficult.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a huge conversation to talk about what you started off there, like this idea, and I find it really interesting as well. Going a bit deeper on this, the kind of work that I've done in the past with plant medicine. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Gav, but the idea of destiny, and you know, I was just thinking about it this morning when Cass was talking about the topic. One particular ceremony I went on, I don't know how much you know about plant medicine, the psychedelics, and these kind of ceremonies, but you get kind of visions that come to you when you're in these ceremonies. And one of them was when I did an ayahuasca ceremony in the UK. I was shown, and it was almost like a filing cabinet, and it was a filing cabinet of my life, you know, from start to end. And I had a vision of one of these files getting taken out and being shown to me that I was going to die in my 60s of a heart attack, you know. And when I spoke to the shaman, I mean, there was a whole amount of fear that came up around that. I was like, oh, really? 60? That's young. And there's all these fears that came up around it about.
I was just thinking the other thing. I was just thinking, 20 more years to go.
Exactly. Well, all this fear came up about me having to, you know, 60 really is quite young, isn't it? You don't want to die at 60. And all this fear about me leaving my kid behind, and you know. And I spoke to the shaman afterwards. She said, "Oh, the medicine showed you that. Even though that's your future now, it showed you it in order to do something about it. In other words, that's your future, but you can change it by knowing what it is." Yeah. And anyway, I've done a lot of healing work since. And when I went to the Amazon in Peru, I was actually told that the healing work had been done, so that future wasn't going to happen now. I just saw
that's exactly what I wanted to say. That the moment when you see that future, that's impossible for that future to happen.
Yeah, in other words, you can change it. There is a future laid out in front of you.
So you've used nurture to affect nature there, then, almost.
I think as human beings that the great thing about being a human being is that you can shape your future. I think we're conscious beings, aren't we? You know, in other words, animals are stuck, really. And I think that there's a big conversation about mindfulness as well here, because I believe that our minds essentially are like a program that runs based on our karma, past actions, past lives, etc. And that if we just kind of blindly follow our lives, our our minds our whole lives, then it is like being on one track. In other words, your future is pretty much set for you. But if you can take a step back and observe your mind and realize that you have some kind of control over your mind, I think you can actually shape your destiny in whatever way you want. You know, in other words, like the mind is like a program that runs, but if you can take a step back and observe it, then I believe you actually have a choice as to how you want your future to pan out and how you want your destiny to pan out. That's my view anyway. That's why I think mindfulness and meditation is so important.
I like that. So you're kind of saying like that there is, if you do nothing, the tape just runs the automatic
the program
preset,
runs like a computer,
the preset,
like a
and
software.
then the preset what you. But there is a difficulty there, which I find fascinating, is the living in the now. Because every time when I live in the now, I feel like I'm living that automated program. So there's nothing really triggering me, there's nothing going wrong, there's nothing going weird. It gets boring living in the now. Is that then the pre-programmed path, or can you live in the now and change your path?
Can you live in the now and change your path? I think the present moment, really, when you're in the present, you are free of your mind. I mean, your mind is always taking you off into past and future, isn't it? And I just think if you're not aware of the fact that you're not your mind and you can observe it, then really you're kind of like running on one track, I think, you know. And it's a difficult concept to get unless you've done much in the way of mindfulness and meditation work. But certainly, this is what I found. The mind might tell you one thing, like, oh, you're never going to be able to do this, for example. But if you then have the headspace around that and the awareness to be able to go, okay, that's just one voice, that's one view, I don't have to believe that. All of a sudden, that path that is taking you down, you're off it. You know, in other words, like for example, if you're saying I'm going to create my own business, and your mind says you can't do that, you're not good enough, you know, you haven't got the skills to do that, and you believe that, then that sort of path to that particular future is shut off. But if you're able to step off and go, I don't necessarily have to believe that, I don't believe that's true, then you're going in a different path, you know, one that says I can do this, you know. So that's my experience.
You can switch tracks.
Exactly, you've got a choice. Yeah, I don't have to believe this thought. I don't have to believe every thought that comes along that says I can't do this. Or
then there's this thing what you just said earlier, is that people have like self-destructive behavior as well. Just like choosing to take the wrong path, and just because there's some excitement in it, maybe, or what you just said earlier is that a child that goes to another kid and punches him and does that no matter what the outcome is, basically. So,
but I sometimes when with kids, and like I've got two young children, and sometimes you'll say, "Why did you do that for?" And a lot of the time they say, "I don't know." And sometimes they could be lying, and other times I think they generally it was just instinct, whatever it was, just a reaction to the situation they found themselves in. There was no premeditation involved. They literally just don't know why they did it. They haven't got that
acting out
cognitive
of
ability to figure it.
There's no
exactly, that's it, perfect word.
Rather than being able to step back and go, okay, if I punch that person or whatever it is, that might not turn out too well. To be able to take
cause and consequence.
Which you develop over time.
I think also with children it's a matter of their learning. Like, that's the thing. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to mess up. Like, as humans and adults, we make mistakes. It's how we learn. But just coming back to what you were saying there in terms of like the mind and sort of keeping yourself on that one track. Like, I guess the mind is programmed to keep us safe. That's what it is there primarily for. It keeps us breathing. It tells us when we're hungry, when we need a drink of water, bits and pieces like that. So the mind is sort of programmed to keep us safe. And I guess when we challenge that, that's when we're pushing our comfort zones, because it all of a sudden feels very uncertain, like we're not entirely sure. And I spoke at an event back in February in London called Connect You, and I spoke about the stories that we tell ourselves and that we pick up as children that then can show in later adult life. And there's exactly one of them. Why is it that some people have sort of the mindset that they can almost like take on the world, whereas some people often shy away from that? And very often it comes down to a story, or sometimes they're called paradigms, that we're telling ourselves, like, I couldn't possibly do that. And I think for me, when I made the decision to explore online business and go down that route, certainly working as a teacher, like I speak about this a lot, Casper knows, on my webinars and stuff, because it challenged literally everything that I believed about the world. Because, you know, a part of me being a teacher was the fact that I was, you know, sharing this idea, and Robert Kiyosaki talks about it in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, this idea of how the world works by you going to school and working really hard so you can get amazing grades, and going to like the top universities so you can work really hard, and, you know, get that amazing job so you can work really hard, and then you're supposed to find a partner and maybe have children, and it's kind of like this predetermined life path by society.
Yeah, by social. Yeah.
Yeah.
A society's paradigm, isn't it?
Precisely, yeah. So then, and actually, what I found as a teacher is that I was kind of fueling this for the kids, because that's the way our education system in England and Wales is kind of structured. It is an ever-developing thing. I like to think that even in this, you know, time, sort of the 7 years that I've been involved with education, it has moved on a little bit, but it's not there. It's still not there.
No, but it is opening up, and we talked about that before. Look,
we talked about it a lot.
Yeah, but here I was talking to my friend the other day, and the children start the day with 1 hour well-being. That's what they do now. The first hour is well-being, and they talk about. I don't really know. I've asked them, like, can you give me like the topics and what you're talking about? But either way, that's a good start of the day. Not just. I sometimes had like math first hour of the day. Go on. I mean, so the development is coming, and I think that it's the global awakening that we're in, that it gets better. And exactly what you said, that predetermined or conditionalized by society, that's exactly the thing why I'm living here now. Because what happened with me is that I was kicked out of every school, and there was always something wrong with me. And in the end, we figured out, obviously, it was just the schooling system and me didn't work together. But by hearing your whole life that there's something wrong with you, that you need to go to a psychiatrist, that you need to take medicine and all that kind of stuff, when I was like 32 or something, I was like, I'm out of here. I've had enough of your negativity. Because if you want to run your society the way you want to run it, that's all right. But don't tell me that if I don't want to do it that way, that I'm crazy. And to the moment when I went out, when I went into the desert, I realized that they're crazy, or that it's just relative, right? And that's when I decided, like, I don't like your conditionalized society, the way you do things, and the commercial way of living and all that kind of stuff. And that's why I moved here, exactly because of that. I had the feeling that I got this coat, this heavy winter coat laid upon me, and I didn't want that. I wanted to sit in my t-shirt in the sun. It took years and years to take that coat off, though. It's really hard. If you have 30 years of indoctrination almost, and then take that off, challenge you to a lot. But
it's really interesting what you just said there about how when you were at school and perhaps you were maybe perceived as one of those challenging children.
Yeah, because I always said why. I always said why. And then the answer was just because. And I was like, no, nothing is just because.
And that's the thing, like, we're very quick to put labels, like, on people. And whenever I was teaching, like, if a child was presenting with challenging behaviour or behaviour that's not suitable for school, I would always ask, why? Like, why are they doing that? What are the series of events? And again, this comes back to the whole choice thing. Like, what were the series of events that led up to that child demonstrating that behaviour? And certainly when I was speaking with colleagues and other teachers and stuff from other schools, and they'd always talk about, you know, that child that they had in the class. And, you know, sometimes they'd walk in at sort of 9 o'clock in the morning, and the first thing they'd do is just start being difficult. And sometimes it was difficult because teachers would just be like, well, why are they doing this? Like, and I tried to explain to them that you don't know what sort of morning they've had. Maybe they woke up late whilst being shouted at by their parent, or maybe they wanted, I don't know, jam on toast, but there was no jam. maybe there was no toast, and they've come to school and they're really, really hungry. Like that's the sorts of children that I worked with. Like,
and kids will play on that. Kids will play on that as well.
Yeah, and
those are serious issues sometimes in a young child's life. Trust me. There's no Nutella in the house. There's serious issues, Casper.
Yeah, no, but there's also the thing is that if you say that, like, why? In my case, it comes back to what you just said, Tony. I don't know. So the schooling system was saying that I was misbehaving, but in my opinion, I was not misbehaving. I was just living and playing, and I did my best and all that, but it was not good.
And that's,
I had I had my toast and I had my jam, and my mom was never shouting. I never woke up late, and so there was not much reason. More so to what you just said earlier, Tony, as in, if the teachers asked me, why do you do that? I said, I don't know. And it was not like, I was not a rascal. I was not throwing things around or whatever. I was not like, you know what I mean? It was just like...
Yeah.
You were just a cheeky chappy, Casper, weren't you?
Never changed.
No.
But the thing is, like, I'm a firm believer that all behaviour is communication. Like everything, even like no communication is a form of behaviour. No behaviour is a form of communication. Like, sort of even when you're ignoring somebody, you're still communicating to that person. You're basically communicating that I don't want to speak to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all behaviour is communication. So that's the thing I would constantly do when I was in the classroom is I'd look at a child and the way that they were behaving, and I'd ask myself why. Why are they behaving that way? What's caused them to show and communicate? Yeah. And very often I'd go over to them and say things like, what is it you need to tell me? And it's a very different approach to the teacher standing at the front yelling at them like, will you sit down? And in all my time as a teacher, I have never shouted. Never shouted at a child, never shouted at a class.
And you were a primary school teacher?
Primary school teacher, yeah, in a very deprived area.
Wow. So that's impressive, Gavin. That's very impressive.
But the thing is, I used to always ask myself, like, who do I want to be? Like, in this moment, when this child is, showing... Because the behaviour isn't the child. The behaviour is a byproduct of what's going on in their life. So, this is why, like, I cringe when you hear maybe parents or teachers or whatever saying, oh, you're such a naughty boy or you're such a naughty girl. They're not naughty. The behaviour is naughty. They are not. And this is where I think it's you got to be careful. You got to be careful. But the thing is, if you're constantly told that you're, bringing it all the way back to the choices, if you're constantly told that you're a naughty as you're growing up,
10,000 times as well. Yeah.
When you become an adult, what are you going to do? Yeah, you're going to challenge society because you're rebelling. Yeah. So you are going to get involved in crime.
I stepped out of society, literally stepped out. I was like, I have enough of that. And then, if I think back now, I have a great life at the moment, but there's quite a lot of trauma if you hear 32 years that you're doing it wrong. Then you get, it's so difficult to now step up and say, hey, I'm allowed to say what I want to say without... I was really pushed back into my shell and stepped out of society in the end,
It's actually society's programming you, aren't they? They reinforcing. If you're told no 10,000 times and only once yes, what are you going to constantly think?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Just on that the wide education system, that's what I'm really kind of interested to have you on, because we talk about education a lot, and you touched on it there, this idea of education. Really, we're pushing kids, as we were, to sort of find a job, ideally in a subject, an area that you like, but so many of us kind of end up in these kind of round pegs in these square holes and just spending our lives in these unfulfilling jobs, just trying to earn money. And how much of that do you think is down to the education system, or is that kind of a wider society issue? Because now we've all kind of woken up as we're approaching kind of middle age to, I don't have to do that. I can actually, the opportunities are available now to create my own business. There's no class in school saying entrepreneur class. You know what I mean? Or create your own business. I know it wasn't quite the same perhaps when we were in school about the way online business has just exploded now, and you can create your own business around anything that you're passionate about. But do you think that was a kind of a fault in the education system then? We all everyone ends up just going down this path. I know you probably in teaching is a bit more fulfilling, but certainly for a lot of us, just ending up in these kind of, like I said, a round peg in a square hole. unfulfilling jobs?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, and it's like, I mean, Casper's been on a few of my Sunday webinars, and he knows that often the conversation kind of drifts out. I do try and pull it back because, like, it's such a massive topic. Like, it's huge. And I don't know whether or not it's I'm not saying that I completely disagree with the education system. Like, I was a teacher for years, like, and that's the thing. And I loved teaching. I loved being in the classroom. The thing for me is that it has evolved, and it's becoming a lot more about paperwork and tests, certainly say in England and Wales, and that's the only curriculum I can speak of because that's the only one that I've experienced. But, like, certainly in England and Wales, it's a lot more about, like, making the required progress. It's less about the holistic view of the child and more focus on how can we get them from where they are now to where they need to be by the end. And in primary, it's like by the end of year 6. Like, they need to get this in their SATs, or as a school, like, the spotlight's going to come down on us. So it's how can we make that happen? And I actually think that's kind of sad. Like, I think, it's becoming more about data on a piece of paper than the actual holistic needs of the child. So in terms of, coming to the round peg in a square hole analogy, it's I think a lot of it is that I don't really know if by the time we're in our sort of late teens, which is when we're picking, like, what we want to do at university, and we're making these key decisions, whether or not we know ourselves well enough to do that. Like, if you said to me sort of, as I was going off and doing my teacher training, like, in 7-8 years you're going to be owning your own online business, you're not going to be, like, I still do teach, like, I do supply teaching, like, and I love that because I go into one school that I really like, and it's quite a challenging one, but I go in there and they like me because I can, I don't run out because the kids start misbehaving or anything like so I just think that we don't know ourselves necessarily, and we're asking late teens, early 20s, people to make decisions that are going to impact on the rest of their lives. Now, I know the world has moved on, and I know that people listening to this might be like, well, you could always retrain, and you could always that. And yes, you're right, but I've spotted this in teaching is that, so if you take my journey as a teacher, I trained to be a teacher, I started working in teaching. Around about 2 years in, I kind of was a bit like, this is taking more and more and more of my time. So this is when I started to look at other avenues, and this is when online business came onto my, like, online business was never on my radar, ever. My thought for my life would be is that I'll be a teacher, senior manager, deputy head, that'll be my life. All the way, up until retirement. Then I came across online business because I realised that I was just losing all this time. Like, I never had time for anyone, like my family, my friends, my girlfriend at the time. Like, I just didn't have any time. And what I found was that, I think this is the reason why I loved online business so much, was the fact that I could have gone and retrained, but I was earning a salary. Yeah. And in order to retrain, if you're going to go back to university, I mean, I know there's open university and there's all these different ways of doing it, but if you're going to retrain, you're more than likely going to have to take a financial hit. The problem is that we have, like, houses, cars. We have this lifestyle that we need to maintain. And I certainly saw it more so with sort of other teachers and stuff that would often come to me and speak to me, and they always had this sense of being stuck. Like, they'd worked in teaching for like 10 years and they loved the teaching. Like, I haven't met a teacher that hated the classroom. Most teachers love the classroom. They just don't like all the paperwork and the reports and the progress meetings and all these things that just go along that people don't see. But they feel stuck because they have the house, the car, they have the holiday every year. They have all these almost financial commitments and they can't take the financial hit. But it's a shame because they're stuck. So they can't jump.
Yeah. I was the exact opposite, because during my, in the UK, in these schools, you have these, what do you call them? Weeks out when you're at school. What do they call them?
Open day? Parents' evening?
No, we used to go off for a week, like...
residentials?
Yeah, so the 2 weeks I did separately, I did as in primary schools, because I really wanted to be a teacher when I was at school. That was what I really wanted to do. And for whatever reasons, as I went through my A-levels, I just fell in through that, university, not really wandering through education, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a job. And then I left university and and only did their IT. I'm from an IT background. That's all I really knew what to do. And before I knew it, I was in an IT job, and like 10 years had gone by. But I started to get that nagging feeling that I still wanted to be a teacher. And so I went back to some seminars, some open days, like the NEC, you'll know, Gavin. Looking to get back, but I'd been in full-time employment to that point now, 10 years, that I'd got married, I'd got a house, I'd got a mortgage, my wife was wanted to start a family soon. And it's just got to that point, like you said, that I was almost trapped in my own lifestyle, that I couldn't afford to take the financial hit to go back and retrain and do the top up to do my teacher training to then become a teacher. And that's one of my big regrets I had, that I wish I'd have just took the plunge straight out of university, or even done that at university before I got all these social commitments and lifestyle that I had. But maybe one day. But it's definitely something I'd always love to. I wish I'd have given it a go and tried it and done it. And that's something I want to do for my wife as well, because she's a vet nurse and she's done that for 20 years. But she wants to retrain. But I want to be able to get my business to a point where I can give her I can say, look, your salary is no concern to our lifestyle now. You can just go off and retrain. Don't worry about it, and give her that and pass on that to her, really.
Yeah, but then you got the problem with a lot of people that, like you say, that the financial, so your lifestyle and the financial, most of the time they scale up together.
Yeah.
The moment when you get more money in,
you spend more money.
You spend more money, and that's such a strange thing. So you will always be stuck if you do that.
Yeah, it's a gift and a curse.
You've never had
it's a gift and a curse in the same.
Yeah, so that's also a moment where you need to say, like, okay, I'm happy with what I have, and now I'm going to earn more. And then you create then you don't have that big of a financial hit in the end, because you do it with your savings. Well, yeah, that's a little bit slightly off topic, because with the question I wanted to ask there is, if you watch all those series about those criminals or people that you even have a couple of them like Making a Murderer, right? I think that was the name where someone was set up by the police, and it's amazing, and I get quite scared if I see stuff like that. And especially when it comes to like a split moment. Let's say that I wake up and we've got a homestay here, and let's say that there's some of the guests suddenly died. Oh, yeah, I don't know what happened. Can happen, right? And then the police comes in and they say that it was me. And then they also find drugs in my room in Indonesia. I mean, those things can happen. And I find it fascinating. But look, especially when I'm in the Western world, when I'm in Holland, I actually am more scared about that. Because what will happen if that happens to you? And does it overcome you?
I guess it's one of those things. I mean, I personally wouldn't, like, for me, I wouldn't ever sort of think like that, because I think it's just kind of one of those things that it's like...
It's because of those series that I think about that, of course.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, I understand what you're saying and stuff like that. And again, we never know what's going to happen in life unless, you know, you have some sort of magical experience, as Mark did. But, like, you never know what's going to happen in life. And it's kind of one of those things that I think a lot of the time things are sent to test us and to show us things about ourselves. Yeah. And with that experience that you're talking about there, I guess really it's like, until you're in that situation, you possibly couldn't even begin to second guess how you'd react, what you'd do. But it's kind of one of those things where it's like, the more you focus on it... It would be a test then. It's going to become... Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a test. It would teach you things about yourself. And I think for me, like, life is all about, like, taking yourself on. Coming back to the whole teaching and online business, I had every reason why I couldn't make this work. Every reason. Like time commitments, like I was working sort of 60, 70 hours a week easily in my teaching role. Then I'd come home and I'd do my online business, and I was tired, I was exhausted, like, but for me it came down to the choice, like, and the question I kept asking myself was, what's the alternative?
Yes.
Yeah. If I don't do this, what's the alternative? And again, that would just sort of realign my choices that I make. Yeah. But in terms of coming back to what you were saying, like, I just think until you're faced with that situation, which I would hope never would occur.
but I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen. But it's just like, I like what you said there. Like everything, if life throws something at you, it's a test. And it's always, and I've learned that since my mom always said, like, everyone gets the weight on the shoulder that they can carry. And if something heavy happens to me, I know that I can carry it. I just have to figure out how. And so I see it as a test. And you all know the story about when my boat sank. That of course I was really sad. I lost everything on the planet, but I knew it was there for a reason and for a test. And when I asked the fisherman, how can I get the boat out of the water? The fisherman, I thought he would say something like with a bucket or with a pump. No, he said, with the heart, not with the mind. I was like, oh shit, there we go. Now I know for sure.
Like Yoda.
Now I know for sure. Yeah, it was just, and from a fisherman. I mean, but then I knew, that's the test. Can I get the boat out of the water with the heart, not with the mind? So not with anger, not wanting it, but wanting it. And it was just beautiful. I knew that was the test. Literally, just a test. And guess what? In the end, together with the fisherman, we got the boat out of the water with the heart. It was beautiful, but yeah. So I approached that really awful, heavy moment as a test as well. Yeah. So and I like that. You don't know. If I ask you, like, what would you do if your boat sinks? You don't know. You will only know when it happens. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like sometimes you just got to trust your intuition and go with what you feel, which I guess is maybe what that fisherman was alluding to, and. Just go with what you feel and take it on head first.
Take it on, yeah.
I was just going to say, when you hit the nail on the head, trust, isn't it? Like, whatever happens in life, trust that it's there for you to learn and to evolve, really, which I think we've all realised that's the point why we're here, isn't it? We're all here to learn, we're all here to evolve. So if something, even if it seems like terrible on the surface happens, can you have that inner knowing that this is happening for me, not to me, isn't it? Like, this is what I need at the moment to learn, to wake up, to evolve. But also, like, as Casper was saying there, I think you've got to be careful if you kind of have this negative view of the future, and it's so frightening to you that it kind of replays in your mind the whole time, because you can almost attract that then.
And it will happen.
That future, exactly. Yeah. So you've got to be careful.
Yeah,
like,
the law of attraction in a negative way. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I remember when I was in holiday once, this girl said to me that she was terrified of this idea of getting old and dying alone, and it was just, and she was only about early 20s, and I'm thinking, what a shame. What a shame to have that fear that kind of like
so
completely dominated your thinking at 21, 22, and you're terrified of dying on your own when you're old. But you can kind of see that if you keep thinking about that, you're going to attract it, and it's going to happen, eventually, But why on earth would you
think about that?
Why? It's just because that fear is so strong for her. Yeah. What's the point of?
But why would you even think about that? The point of 60 years of suffering, and maybe it will not happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it possibly won't, but that's a prime example. Right there, of what Mark shared, that potentially. Now, I hope the girl that you had the conversation with went on to find happiness, and she's ever so happy, blah blah blah. But like, realistically, she may have just found the next guy who may not have been the best for her, and just settled because she was so scared of growing old and becoming lonely and dying alone. But actually, if you're, I'm a firm believer, if you're not fulfilled in your relationship, then you're going to feel very alone anyway.
Yeah.
So that actually might come true. She may have the status of being married, being with somebody, but actually feel extremely alone.
Even more so, perhaps, than actually being. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just a prime example. And I think, again, I'm not saying it was. There could be a whole host of reasons why she was thinking like that in her early 20s. But a lot of it could be, I know it gets a bashing and it could be like social media, again, social pressures, like, look at my life, like, this is amazing. Like, people always show you what they want you to see on social. And that's the thing you've always got to remember. They only show you what they want you to see, which is why...
Social media
you get a lot
anxiety,
of these social media anxieties. A lot of youngsters now who are growing, like, I couldn't imagine growing up now in this world, like with social media as rife as it is. Could you imagine me like a 14-year-old? And
I said it to my
like,
girls. I said, I'm glad I'm not a teenager. My kids aren't teenagers yet, but I say it to my wife. I say, I'm so glad I'm not a teenager in this day in life.
Yeah, yeah, it's mental.
The pressure that must be on kids, and as they go into their teenage years, their formative years, where there's enough pressure in life anyway, just going through high school exams these days, to have all that social media and outside peer pressure almost, from not only from your physical friends but your online friends these days, online bullying instance. I would not want to be a kid in today's world.
And then you throw in the fact that obviously the hormone balance as you just naturally grow.
Yeah.
Like it's just a
minefield.
cocktail for like recipe for disaster sort of thing. But again, like, you know, with these of the girl that you're just saying, like, I would be fascinated to know where has that come from, where in her childhood, because that's a great example of how that belief or story that may come true is impacting her, the actions that she's taking.
Where does it come from? Like what you said before, if someone has a certain behavior, why? What's the why behind it? Where does it come from? Why do you even think about it?
Well, it could be, for example, that she saw someone in her family, maybe a grandparent perhaps die on her own, you know, and lonely or whatever it is. But this is what comes back to the start, doesn't it? Like that, if you haven't got that awareness, that mindfulness of that, it's almost like it is like a program that's running, that fear, to be able to step back and go, that's just a thought. That is just, it's just giving me a possible version of reality. You know what they say? It's like the fears that we have. It's a very small percentage of that will actually happen. Like the amount of fears we have during our lives, and how many of them actually occur and actually happen. It's like it might be a very small, minute number. But without that awareness of, okay, this is just a thought of a version of a possible future that, in all likelihood, it would never happen. Without that mindfulness, that program can just run and rule your life, the rest of your life, you know?
Guys, but that's also kind of ignorance is bliss there sometimes. Right? Like exactly what you just say, like if you know it, well, the moment when you can step back from it, that's good, of course. The moment when you can, that's just a thought. But this reminds me of that story of the missionary that went up to the north of Sweden. This really happened, and he started spreading the word of God there. And he said to the Inuits living there, if you don't believe in God, you will go to hell. And the Inuit said, and this is all written down, so this is why we know it really happened. And the Inuit said, so but what if you don't know about God? Do you go to hell then? Well, no, if you don't know about God, you don't go to hell. So why are you telling me this then? They were perfectly happy before. There was no problem.
They were ignorant
now
to
you
God.
told me. And now you tell me this. Now I need to believe it, because otherwise I go to hell. Thanks for coming here. Get out. And it's really happened. And that's why I sometimes say, like, ignorance is bliss. I don't want to know about it, because then it's not a problem. Then it's not real. It's not in my reality. It will never be in my reality.
Yeah, I'm going to think about it then, haven't you?
Yeah.
I think one of the most empowering concepts that I've come across in the last few years, and I've actually shared this with kids that I've taught, and I think it's actually really helped them, is that in life there's only ever two things that we can control. That's it, which is our thoughts and our actions. And that's it. Nothing else we can control. There's nothing. Like, whether somebody cuts you up on the motorway tomorrow, whether, I don't know, you lose your laptop. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, your laptop's stolen sort of thing. You can't control that, but what you can do is control the thoughts that go on in your head, and the actions that you take.
Yeah.
And again, Casper, I guess that's kind of to sum up with the point that you were saying about, perhaps almost being framed for something. Like, the only thing you can control is what goes on in here, and then how you respond.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's beautiful.
So in that then, it's saying that, do we have a choice then? We are free to make our own choices in life then, aren't we?
Yeah, I think,
Our response.
And have the thought and then take the action on it. Yeah.
I guess, we are kind of free to make our own choices. Of course, there are laws and rules that dictate, and rightly so, try and maintain some order. Could you imagine the world if there wasn't any law and order? Like,
free for all,
Yeah, but again, like, I know I was going to say, like, I remember like coming across an article or a video years ago now of somebody who was like almost challenging the laws. Like, if I was to say to you, you know, the three of you here, like, who would say that, you know, murdering somebody is wrong? Like, I would imagine most people would be like, well, yeah, like it's not exactly fair on the person, not fair on the family. But then there's this article, video, whatever, I can't remember, it's years ago when I came across it. We're like, well, who's to say that it's wrong?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, like if you start thinking like that, then that is opening a can of worms. Like, it's just
Pandora's box, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same, like when I think I was like 18 or 20 or something, and I saw this little video of two philosophers rearranging society. So saying, no, so the politics should be there, and police should be there, and then teachers should be there. And I was just like, are we allowed to do that? I never thought about that. I thought it was as it was. Are we allowed to think about that? We don't have to rearrange it, but yeah, I love that. Yeah, so then that yeah, same principle there.
It's just kind of like, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I'm sure we've all had conversations with a friend or something where you kind of like you sort the world out. But ultimately, again, like I say, like, yeah, we're going to fix this. Like, you know, we're going to sort this out. But often it's after a few beers, and you know, neither of you are talking sense. But yeah, like I think ultimately for me it just always comes back to like I can control my thoughts, my actions, and I always ask myself the question, who do I want to be in this moment? That's it. And again, it's the choice. I'm making a choice. Who do I want to be? It's almost like I have to answer that, and then, you know, and that's what I used to do in the classroom. That's what I would do, you know, at events and stuff, you know, on webinars and stuff. It's like, you know, who do I want to be? How do I want to come across? And again, that's the only thing really that we can control.
And then with thoughts and actions, you will get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
yeah, like,
and
that's the thing. You know, it's kind of like, yeah, like who do I want to be? And then of course that fuels your thoughts and actions. And
of course the acceptance of all the things you cannot change. Right? That's at the moment when you realize that the only thing you can change or control is your thoughts and actions. All the rest. Yeah, why would you suffer from external things then? If I couldn't change it.
But also accepting that you're human. Like, I'm not standing here saying to you guys, I'm like, you know, zen. Like, absolutely. Of course, when people like for example, the other weekend I was driving back from the north, like, and there's this guy on the motorway in this van, typical van, and it's very stereotypical. But like, he was like weaving between all the motorway lanes. Like, he was going from the first to the middle to the third, back to the middle, back to the third, all the way back to the first. Like, you know, and he was obviously in a hurry. Like, clearly he was in a hurry. And that, you know, I caught a few thoughts in my head being like, you know, what an idiot. Obviously a bit stronger than that, but like, you know, what an inconvenience to us all this man is being. But like, you know, I caught these thoughts, but then it's like, well, hold on a second. Like, this guy could be late. Yes. This guy could be rushing home. He could be rushing to try and see a parent. He could be...
Hospital.
You know, trying to get to the hospital, you know. There's all these different things that are going on in your head.
But you judged them already.
But you judge them. So what I've really been trying to work on is catching those judgments. But then what I do is then analyze them. So I catch them, then open them up, and I think, okay, why did I? And I think it's I think it's just fascinating when you really start doing this, and you start reflecting on your own life and the decisions you've made and the path that you've led, and where it's sort of gotten you to today. But then also when you sort of look at somebody else's, and sometimes I prefer not to know somebody's story because it makes it more of a challenge, because it's like, okay, why are they behaving like that? Because as I say, like, all behaviour is communication. So if somebody's being rude to you, it's like, or what you perceive as rude to you, like, they may not realise. And it all comes down to your perception. It's like, okay, why do I feel that it's a massive, like, as soon as you open it you start going down it, but I'm absolutely fascinated. It's just human behaviour, interaction, communication, like identity, and how people identify themselves. Absolutely fascinated with it.
Yeah, it's like this idea of right and wrong. There is no right and wrong, really, is there? It's just a whole world of grey. But I like to term it as like skillful and unskillful. You know, you talk about Netflix. I've just finished watching The Fall. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's like a drama series with a serial killer, and he questions the whole thing. You know, like, why not? What's wrong with killing people? You know, and it is like, okay, there is no right and wrong necessarily. If you were to do that, then it's a huge opportunity to learn. You could say like it's incredibly unskillful, but ultimately it's another way of learning, another way of evolving. Now, you don't want to do that. It's the most unskillful thing you can do. But is there really a right and wrong? It's all opportunities to learn, isn't it?
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And this, I guess, is the massive $1 trillion question. I guess it's like, what constitutes being right and wrong? Like I do think that as humans we need structure. I do believe that, and I think. I think
I think that there is also something what I call universal normal, and I know that everyone is different, but one of the things that have fascinated me my whole life is like the 10 Commandments, and one of them is "Thou shalt not kill." It's like, duh. We don't have to hear that every Sunday, right? I mean, what happened? Like that kind of thing, like there's a reason behind every sign. What happened that needed to be said every Sunday? And so I think that I think that we all have there is a universal normal on how to behave. And of course there's slightly differences, as in, well, maybe a little bit cultural, but still that's cultural again. That's like the skin over the universal normal.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's quite fascinating. In that case, right and wrong is when someone steps off that normal.
Yeah, and I do believe that humans are inherently good. Like if you think about when a baby is born, like it's almost like it's a blank canvas. Technically that baby can speak every language.
Yeah.
They just haven't learned how yet. Yeah. So, I do believe that humans are inherently good. And I think a lot of it comes down to almost like this idea of personal responsibility. Yeah. Like something that really drives me and is a big motivator, I guess, is that I would just like to, whenever my mortal being leaves this earth, like I'd just like to think that I've left it in a little bit of a better state than I found it. Definitely. And like that comes down to, again, like I guess humans being inherently good, personal responsibility. And again, because I do believe that we are inherently good, of course there's the odd exception, of course, but I do believe inherently good. For me, it's like when that doesn't play out for somebody, why?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, and what were the circumstances? And again, is it just down to perspective? Is it down to, because like the example of the guy you were saying in Africa who shot the intruders, like a lot of people would be like, oh, fair enough. But a lot of people would be like, no, he murdered them.
Yeah, so that of course, we were just with a couple of backpackers around the table drinking beers and we hear this story. Now, that was a couple of hours of good debate. Because it was really 50-50 of people saying, no, it's wrong. And while he was just sitting there in the middle being judged. But it was just a really fascinating conversation. And of course, I was just fascinated by the fact that I've met someone like that. Like, met a real life person with a situation like that. And I'm not judgmental at all. So I was like, yeah, don't have an opinion.
Have you guys ever seen the series Dexter?
I would just wanted to say that's that whole principle where we talked about before.
Yeah,
and there's many more of those series where, in this case, Dexter is a serial killer that only kills bad people.
Oh, okay.
Whilst working for the police.
Yeah.
Okay. So a bit like a vigilante.
Yeah, basically.
Well, that's constantly you go like in the same a little bit with Breaking Bad, where you constantly go like, is he a goodie or a baddie?
That's what I'm saying. Watching those series, obviously they're just dramatic programs, they're not reality, but it makes you question again what is right and wrong, and can you adjust the levels on either?
Yeah.
Is there a bit of grey mixed in? They're not completely black and white answers.
And you get a little bit to that what we said earlier, that self-destructive actions. In this case, that we all like a good baddie. We like
the anti-hero almost.
The anti-hero. Yeah. We kind of like that because it challenges us in what's right and wrong, and it also triggers like, I want to do that. I want to be a bad guy sometimes, right? But we're not allowed to, so it's kind of our.
Sometimes the bad boys are deemed the cool, aren't they? I suppose in popular culture and stuff. But this leads me to a question I want to ask Gavin, and something you said that you're saying, who do I want to be in any given time, in any present moment that you find yourself, Gavin? And so it's that having the concept of alter egos, do you adjust who you are in the circumstances and environments you find yourself?
It's interesting, yeah, but certainly...
Consciously or unconsciously?
I try not to, but interesting, one of the first things, when I was training to be a teacher and I was doing my PGCE, which is, the year from hell, to be honest, like it's so intensive, it's just mental. And it's basically like you have a year to learn how you're supposed to teach a class of these 30 young minds, that you're responsible for. It's just, throw it in deep. It was best thing, like, because it challenged me again, like, but it was very difficult. But my first mentor, one of the very first things she said to me was like, teaching is an act.
Yeah.
And that's
interesting.
Yeah. And I kind of, as I went on the journey, I really begun to understand this a lot more. And it's almost like you have an audience of 30 children in your class and you're the show for the day. And I get it. But then I found a bit of conflict, because when obviously I joined like the community and stuff like that, and I started doing a lot of work on myself, and a lot of people are saying like, you should always be who you are.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? So what I had a lot of fun then changing teacher Gav, and I use that sort of inverted commas, changing teacher Gav and bringing in the elements that I'd been sort of learning through my own personal work. And then very much, I think at the end, even still now, like I still feel that I am just me. And I think actually that helped a lot, because I was very often whenever like a child had a crisis or was upset or there'd been a big incident or whatever, I was very often one of the teachers that they would seek, that they'd want to go to. And a few reasons for that is that I tried to treat every child fairly, like regardless of what they'd done. Like they always knew that I would help them as long as they were honest with me. Like, I always say to them, look, if you're honest with me, I can help you. If you're dishonest and you're deceitful, I'm going to struggle to help you. And I think for me, it's quite interesting you mentioned about this, because I definitely say in the early days, I kind of had like two different hats that I was wearing, like teacher Gav and then Gav outside the classroom. But certainly as my journey evolved, I tried to incorporate them together. And I think actually that's when I started to see the biggest result for myself, was because the kids felt like they knew me. And that was it. Yeah. And I think that was really, so if I was to bump into them in the supermarket or if I was to see them out of school, like I never changed who I was. Different, I was, and whereas I think at the beginning I was.
Yeah, but I think that's always like that. If you want to become a captain, you first have to pretend to be a captain. And then after a while, you are a captain.
You become that.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you become that, so you can be yourself, because now you are a captain. Or whatever it is. Right? So first you have to pretend a little bit. It's the same what we do when we go to bed every night. We pretend to sleep and then we fall asleep. We lay down and we do, I'm sleeping, I'm not sleeping. But you pretend to sleep before you fall asleep. And you need to pretend the role or the path. And so you take those actions and you have that mindset. And then after practice, you are that person. And then you can be yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree, but what I would try and do is almost bring myself into that role, if that makes sense. So, I was never too far away from who I was. I heard some stories like in teaching, like some old school teachers would say things to you like as a newbie. They'd be like, never smile until Christmas.
What?
And I was like, what? like this is like honestly, like this was like never smile till Christmas. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, they were saying it's always a lot easier to go in hard with your class and then relax than to go in relaxed and try and get tougher.
First get the respect.
And I understand the concept. And I remember speaking to this woman who was very much at the end of her career. I think she did like 3 more years and then she retired. And I remember having this conversation with her, and I said to her, why do I have to have like a battle plan? Why can't I just go in?
Is it a war zone?
Just be me, and then just
helmet,
just get to know like one of my mentors at uni, one of the best things she ever said was get to know your little people. Like, and that stuck with me as well. Like, I would much rather go in and get to know every single one of those children in my class, because then that gives you that relatability.
Yeah.
But then I would take it one step further, and I made the decision and the choice to get to know as many children as I could in the school, because you never knew when you needed one of them to do something for you, and if you have that rapport with them, they're more likely to do it.
Wow.
So I kind of like, I would try and like identify those children, and on a few occasions it's really worked well. Like, there's been a few incidents where I've had to have a child that I've never even taught before, who's a few years older than the year group that I was teaching, and he, you know, did something for me because I got to know him. I knew that he liked riding his motocross bike at the weekend when he was at his dad's. I knew that he'd, you know, supported Leicester City, and I knew that he, you know, I knew all these things about him. So when I asked him to do something, he did it.
Wow.
Without taking the time to get to know him. But that was, I always feel like, coming back to what you were asking in terms of, I don't think that was a persona. I think that was just me. Like, I just genuinely was interested about that kid. So.
Those are the best teachers. Those are the best teachers. I remember those teachers that were just themselves and be able to keep the class in control. So that you have to have that personality, and that's why teaching is not for everyone, I guess. If you're not, if you don't have the personality to be yourself. But you sound like an amazing teacher. I wish I was at your school as a kid, or I wish I had you as a teacher, because I think that we would be good friends then. You would be one of the teachers that wouldn't kick me out the whole time.
No, I was often the teacher that would receive the children that had been kicked out. Like, that was the sort of thing.
That's what I meant, yeah.
But and that was the thing. Like, I ended up, you know, many a times I ended up with like my class plus like a couple of 5-year-olds, maybe an 11-year-old. Like, it was just so like my class was very full at times, and no, but I really enjoyed it. Like, and it was good. But as I say, I tried my hardest to not have two different hats. I just tried like it. I understand what my first mentor was saying, and I totally get it, but I kind of took what she said and then adapted it for myself.
And for some people, maybe for some people that, like I said, some people that are not really teachers from the heart, they need to learn that, maybe, right? For some people, it's like you first learn the role of teacher and then you become one. But
I think it's important to.
You're a natural. I think that's what I mean.
It's also important to establish those boundaries. Like, I took what that lady was saying in terms of never smile till Christmas, and I took that and adapted it to myself. And I was thinking, okay, well, I think, you know, children for me, like in my experience as a teacher, always look for 3 things in the classroom, which is boundaries, consistency, and fairness. And I think if you hit those as a teacher, those kids are going to love you. Like, if you set boundaries, because all children, adults need boundaries. Like, you know, all children need boundaries, and as long as you're consistent with them, with everybody, and you're fair, and you treat everybody fairly, and sometimes treating everybody fairly is actually treating children differently, because we're all unique. Again, it comes back to the whole holistic. Like, you know, is that behaviour that you'd expect from that child? You know, yes, no. So again, being fair doesn't always necessarily mean like.
There's no standard for fair. Right, no, that's the old cartoon of the snake, the monkey, and the elephant, and then the schooling system says, okay, we all need to climb the tree. You see the elephant like, hey, that's not fair. I mean,
that's the thing, you know. So
I just one more question there, Gav, because I know you kind of what you've done then is you've kind of taken your teaching knowledge that you've acquired, and then now you're bringing it into. Combining it almost with the entrepreneurs world, the online business world, because you're teaching within the community, aren't you? Which is obviously completely different to teaching primary school kids. But
no, it's the same.
Where do you see then exactly the same? Did you mention kids? So Casper does it as well, obviously.
Yeah, but, adults are just like bigger kids.
yeah. But how do you see it developing now? What do you see in the future in terms of your business that you're creating? Is it more of a coaching, teaching type role in combination with business? Do you think, or?
Yeah, so that's kind of the path I've been sort of going down since pretty much last summer, is more the coaching side of things. So I'm doing a lot of like upskilling, because I think like we've always got to keep learning. Like, nobody, I believe, knows everything. So I'm doing a lot of upskilling. I'm looking at a lot of courses. I've done a few courses and stuff as well in terms of the coaching. And the coaching is, again, it's quite a funny story. Like, it's something that I kind of stumbled into. Like, it never really was on my radar when I got started. Like, it was never there. And I think what had happened was that just naturally I started having a lot of people come to me and asking me for my time, like they were stuck with whether it's a block or a mindset issue or something. And then all of a sudden I was kind of like, well, why? Like, I never understood why. Like, why did they keep coming to me? Like, I just was like, well, do I know? Like, do you know what I mean? But then just through conversations with, closest friends in the community and stuff, and, they sort of helped me realise that perhaps it is that primary school teaching, like, nurture thing. I remember one of the mentors said to me early on, he said, if you can take any of these concepts and ideas and break it down so a 10-year-old can understand it, then you can teach it to adults.
Yeah.
And like he was saying, what you've got there is an amazing skill because you can do that, because you know how to do that, because that's essentially what you do in teaching is you take an idea or a concept and you think, how can I tailor this so that a 7-year-old can grasp it? And that really helped me. But as I say, I found a lot of people coming to me, and then naturally I was like, well, okay, well, obviously there's something here. So I explored it further, and that's when I kind of stumbled into almost like this coach role, which is very similar to teaching, but it is different. I think it's more kind of like, I find myself thinking of sort of different ways to unlock people's potentials, which is the same in teaching, but it's without the formal structure of this is your lesson and these are the objectives and this is what they've got to do by the end of the hour, and bits and pieces like that. So it's very similar. It's very similar. And I think certainly my experience as a teacher has definitely helped me in my role as a coach.
Awesome.
Mark, I think you had another appointment coming up, right?
We're going to the farm. So this is why my background's gone a bit chaotic at the moment. Everyone's come back, but bank holiday as it is here in the UK, so we've got action-packed day, feeding animals and stuff. But that was brilliant.
Good.
Thanks, Gav. I really enjoyed that.
That was
Great
really
to hear your
good.
perspective as a teacher as well, because we talk so much about education on here, and that kind of awakening moment when we all suddenly realise, oh, hang on, it doesn't have to be this way. And you've obviously found that, and you're on a path that really obviously suits all your skills that you're learning on the way. So, thanks so much, Gav. That was a brilliant pod. Great to get all your
I think the
knowledge.
education is probably a whole episode in itself. Like, probably, it's just so big. Like, and again, that's why on my sort of Sunday webinars that I lead in the community, I do try and pull it back a little bit, because like before you know it, you could be 4 hours. Like, and people still you could talk about it for that long, because everybody's got their own perspective on the way it should be and how it should be. But I think for me I like to think it's getting there, but there's just still not enough holistically on the child.
I would agree. Yeah.
Hopefully it comes.
Entrepreneurs class, that's what they need.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah, but schools are trying. I know that. So I don't want any teacher to listen to this and be like, "What's he on about?" Like, we're trying. Which I know schools are trying. But it's just there's all these other pressures. Like, they've got to learn to read, they've got to learn to write, and they've got to learn to do maths, and it's like it's finding the time to prioritize things like mindfulness and even discussing like emotions. So, but you can't always find it.
Brilliant. Well, let's hope for a brighter future there then.
Indeed.
And let's just keep on spreading this gospel of that we after 40 years finally found out that that's also something that you need to learn.
There's another way.
Yeah. Great pod. Let's end it there, because otherwise we could go on for 4 hours, as you just said then. That's it for now. I would say adios, amigos.
Adios.
See you soon, guys. Cheers, Gav.
Gracias, Gavin.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
You have been listening to
Free Amigos.
Hey there, hope you've really enjoyed listening or watching to the conversation today. And as promised, we have all the links to the topics discussed in the description below and also on our website.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, please feel free to hit that subscribe button or follow the link to our brand new website, where you can sign up to our weekly newsletter.
Thank you for watching or listening. We hope you got something good out of it. If you've got any interesting topics you'd like us to discuss or any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And that's it. See you in the next pod. Adios.
Cheers.